Hello and welcome, I'm JD and this is the dedicated servers update video. So as the title of this video alludes to, this update brings the long-awaited dedicated servers to Nebulous Fleet Command. Now these are hosted on the East Coast and West Coast of North America, 3 on each, and it serves as the cornerstone or a foundational aspect at least of the Conquest game mode, which is the first of the 2 single-player game modes that will be released for a Nebulous Fleet Command. So the benefits of having dedicated servers means that players no longer have to host on their computers. The host computer is always the one that takes on a lot of the calculations and the load to the GPU. And if you don't have the best computer, that can cause issues disconnecting all players from the game or individually crashing out. So this allows all players now to play, I guess, a bit more on a level playing field using the servers, depending on how far you are away from each of the server locations. This will also help if, for example, the host rage quits, for example. Doesn't happen too often, but there are instances where players have gone in, lost their fleets, and quit, much to the other 7 players' frustration. And you can also now host your own servers. So there is a document I can put down in the description below that will help guide you through that. So where do you find them? In multiplayer, all of the servers now will be listed up at the very top for the official ones. So you can see here, there are 6 official dedicated servers. Where do we have? 3 on the West Coast, 3 on the East Coast. We can also see that there is a community member who has hosted their own dedicated server already here, which is testing the official maps on US West. Now, this is the ping from Australia at about 7:30 at night on a Tuesday. Obviously, if you are closer, you are going to have a better ping than I will. So if we jump into Area Official, we'll be greeted with the message of the day. You also have the instructions on how to use the dedicated server, and that the game conditions require at least 2 players to play, and all players must be ready. The game will now immediately start when all the conditions are met. So if another player joins and they ready up, then we will immediately go in. So if you are not ready, don't press the ready button. Otherwise, it'll take you all in a little bit before maybe you were actually ready as a lobby. So you can use the commands. For example, they start with an exclamation mark and help, which is, I think it says here, use the help command to see all available commands. And it'll say things such as list maps. So if we list all the maps, you'll see everything that you can vote on and select. And this one here, it has Pillars, Cliff, Nix's Eye, Caltrop, Canyon. And even though it's not rotating, it is also got Abyssal and Small Testing Range to choose from. Now, some of the servers will have just the official maps. Some will also have modded maps loaded up as well. So just be aware of that, or depending on which ones you go in. You can also do the same with scenarios. That'll show you what the scenarios are that are currently loaded. So again, all official game scenarios. And then you can vote. So voting is how you as a lobby will be able to change the map, or you'll be able to change the game mode or the options, which you can no longer change by left-clicking the drop-downs. You now need to do the vote options, or vote time, I think this one is. And I'll ask you then to input the options. So if I wanted to change the time to 30 minutes, should be vote time 3, and a vote will come up. Now you have 30 seconds to make your election. If either yes or no. Now when I press yes, it's going to say failed, because you need at least 2 people really to vote, and any votes that are tied will fail. So you need the majority of the lobby. So if you're playing, 8 players, you're going to need 5 of them to all agree before this changes. One thing that you'll also see now is that when a player is in the fleet editor, instead of it being red, it'll now be purple. So you'll have green if you're ready, red if you're not ready, and purple so that other players know you're actually in the fleet editor. The way that the lobbies will work is once you have finished, once you've all readied up, you'll go play the game. You'll then all go into the debrief. The debrief will have a 5-minute timer before it returns all players to the lobby. All players choose to return back to the lobby, then it's going to, it will then just reset you all, and you'll be able to play another game, choosing a new map via a vote, or playing the next map in the rotation. So this one says that it's in progress. It's also one of the modded maps. We'll load that up in a second. When they're in a debriefing, it should also say in debriefing here, so you'll know when a game is about to end. And there's roughly, so if you see in debriefing, it's got about 5 minutes before it comes back to the lobby and everyone's ready to play. Just to give you a quick look on the modded maps that are loaded. We have, again, Abyssal and Small Testing Range are located within the map pack because they are official maps. However, they're not in the rotation. Then you have a curated list of modded maps that you'll see a lot of the community modders have made. You see anyone that has a double green chevron next to their name, then they are an admin of that dedicated server, or they are, in a peer-to-peer context, the host. Back to the dedicated servers, you can now report people. So you can report people either in the lobby or in the debriefing, not during the game at the present time. So to report someone due to any poor behavior, if you see any sort of hate speech, symbols that shouldn't be really thrown around carelessly. I shouldn't have to explain this. It is in the pop-up terms of service that you will get when you update the game. Most of you would have accepted that already. Now, I mustn't be able to do it to myself, but you right-click on the player and it will say, it'll open a little drop-down. You can view their Steam profile. You can also then report them. That'll open up another window. And from that other window, you'll be able to enter the reasons why. From there, it'll go off to the developers. The developers will be able to obviously see that. If you want to appeal a ban or anything like that. And bans don't really get handed out too often in Nebulous Fleet Command. I think in the 18 months of release or so, I think I've only heard of 2 people being banned, and for fairly good reasons. Then you can dispute it either through the Discord, through ModMail, or through ModMail, the bot, I'm pretty sure it is, or through there was another way, I can't remember it. If you are kicked from a lobby now, it will say that you've been kicked. It will no longer say that you've been disconnected. If you've been kicked twice from a game in a dedicated server lobby, you'll have to wait till the next game, until that game has been completed, and then you'll be able to rejoin. If you are in a peer-to-peer, 2 kicks from a lobby means you can't rejoin that lobby until that game has been completed, in which a new game is then hosted. So some new player quality of life enhancements. Now, obviously, most players here are probably already past the tutorials, but if you've got new players who are joining that you're bringing on board, the developers have now split out the Fleet Academy, which is your basics, so interface, weapons, damage control, down to the anti-ship missile defense. So what's been moved out of here is the old Lesson 6, and which was the Advanced Missile Tutorial, and the Lesson 7, which was TRPs. The reason being, and a lot of you would know it, people start playing down in order, and they get to the advanced missiles, and there's a lot of people who can't get past that, thinking that they need to get past it before they can play the game. And it's just a little bit clunky for new players to get into it. Once you've sort of done the first 6 here now, you're good enough to take a fleet into skirmish, play around with it, and then come back to missiles, which are now under the Missileer School, which are the advanced tutorials. So we've got the advanced missile tactics, like I said, is the previous lesson 6, where you have to, at the end, curve that missile around and take out that ship at the top of cliffs from memory. And then you've also got lesson 2 being TRPs. Now I can see that later on as more advanced concepts get added, particularly with Conquest, which will need its own strategic layer. We'll have some more tutorials on here on how to actually navigate that and interact with that. The other thing that has been done, which is really great, if you come in to the starter fleets in the Alliance, they are now sorted by, not alphabetically, but by the difficulty rating being easy, and then all the way down to hard. Now, again, this solves a new player issue of coming into a single player game. Like many people do, you finally cleared the advanced tutorial number 6 for missiles, and the first thing you do is you jump in here, you load up your game, and you pick the first starter fleet that you have. It's not generally Oak. Everyone knows that due to alphabetical orders, everyone's putting in Task Force Ash. They wonder why that it's really hard to get into the game. This is a great quality of life enhancement for a lot of people, or a lot of people that will eventually join the game. Now that they know Task Force Oak, Task Force Birch are the easier ones. Likewise, down in the Protectorate, the Azerite Squadron, Garnet. Then we've got Pinite, Wolfenite, and Zircon. Should know these names, which are easy to hard. So if you're recommending new players fleets to start with, take into account that the game has now given a easy rating to them, as well as a moderate down to hard. If we come into a game, Canyon now has a default point limit of 1500, and there's been changes to Caltrop, so let's have a quick look at that. Just quietly, there are new loading screens. I won't show them all, I'll let you see them. Discover them for yourself, but well done to the team, obviously, on putting a little bit of visual difference in. So Canyon, the changes to Canyon is that the F and G points, so F and G, have come now down or closer to the center, which is around point A. Previously, they were a lot higher and a lot lower, which meant that when you started the trek, so where am I? I'm over here. It was a long trek down to point G, and it was a long trek to point F. And by the time you got your fleet up to point F, particularly if you were a slower moving ship, you basically could never get down to point G to recap that. So a little bit brought in on both of those. I can't remember exactly how far the distance is. I may not have actually asked the questions to the developers, but definitely has come in a little bit, which is a lot better. Likewise, Caltrop has had a little bit of an update as well. So the player count has gone from a 3v3 map to a 4v4 map. So it's now the same as all the other maps. I don't think there are any more 3v3s. I think there's only 2 versus 2s, as it really is a team game. So 4 versus 4 is a good size. Our first change within Caltrop is that the withdrawal line has now been expanded. Previously, it would have come to about, I think about here. It would have come in about a kilometer or two. Now, that made it very hard sometimes to be able to skirt around Caltrop. You really had to navigate some of these spires. Now, when you look across from a top-down perspective, you'll be able to actually traverse all the way around the map without actually having to get into or being hampered by the spikes from Caltrop. And if we come into Caltrop, you'll see straight away that there is a bit of a difference. The Caltrop textures have been made slightly darker, and the opacity of the trail particles has been reduced a little bit. So some of the areas you'll notice it in particular is around the ice. It's a little bit darker. If you come out a little bit as well, you can see, where's my ships? Just again, how the withdrawal lines are. So it just looks a little bit nicer, I think, overall now with these changes. Hopefully we start to see it in the rotation of people playing this a little bit more now that we have dedicated servers and we've had some of these changes. So just a small change to the power stat. It doesn't actually affect how the power here works or is generated. It's just relating to the number next to it. So the power generation stat now shows the percentage change instead of the percent difference to match the modifiers. I'm not 100% sure what the percent difference is. Maybe a technical term I'm not familiar with, but if you're a layman like me, basically this never used to say 20%. So I've got a plant control center here. It adds 20%. It now says 20%. It used to say something like 18 or 19. The numbers were actually still correct. It was just the percent difference that made it a little bit weirder. And people would be wondering, why do I have 18% when I actually have a 20% modifier on there? It just cleans that up a little bit. If I add another one, just see what it looks like, you can start to see it's 38.43 because there is a bit of a diminishing return from memory, or there was a fix to the bug relating to power in which internal buffing modules such as ammunition elevators would continue to provide their bonuses even when they should not be operational due to the power. So power draws from top to bottom in a number of power categories such as critical down to high, medium, low. Things such as sensors are always critical, and these small buffing modules are low. So you can see here, and I've stripped this right back to get this sort of example being shown. It's not really a real life example you should really find in the wild, but we can generate 2,250 watts of power, which is effectively the ability to run the front line and the 2 Mark 64s. Now, what would previously occur is that these Mark 64s, even in this scenario where we couldn't actually power the ammunition elevators, would still actually be receiving the buff of a 30% reload time. What that means now is, now that it's fixed, is in this scenario, you get the 2 Mark 64s. However, the ammunition elevators in-game will not actually benefit from the ammunition elevator buff. So it'll work as intended, I do hope to get a power tutorial out at some point in the future. I won't give you a timeline because I probably won't meet it. It does mean that any fleet that really relies heavily on buffing modules and that was abusing that power undersupply will now be degraded and not as great. It also means ships that have a lot of these buffing modules will degrade over time, and they'll probably degrade a lot quicker now in terms of combat effectiveness, because after a couple beams or a missile or something like that, and anything that knocks out power, you're going to start losing these ammunition elevators and these buffing modules really quickly. Whilst I'm in here as well, the Mark 550 has been renamed as the Mark 550 Railgun. It was previously the Mark 550 Mass Driver. If you've seen the update video relating to the difference between railguns and mass drivers, the Alliance now has all railguns, so the Mark 81 and the Mark 550, and they operate completely different to the OSP mass drivers, which operate mechanically under a different method. So if you want to know more about that, head over to that video, see that one, and that'll explain it a lot clearer than what I can do quickly in this video here. So some fixes and changes to some of the OSP hulls and equipment. One of the fixes is the colliders, which detect if a ship has been hit in certain areas or not particularly working at the front of a cargo feeder, making them sometimes a little bit more invulnerable and not to take damage. That's now been fixed. So if you've been playing cargo feeders and you've been bow tanking and winning a lot, just be careful how you're using them now, because you may not actually, they may not be as strong as they previously were because they have been fixed. So change to the C81. It now will fire 1 round every 12 seconds as opposed to 4 rounds every 52 seconds. Basically, it has gone from a burst fire weapon with an autoloader now to a sustained fire weapon where it will fire 1 every 12 seconds. Obviously, you can buff that with various things. However, the T81 will still remain, so the turreted option will still remain under the burst fire mechanic with its 4 capacity autoloader as well. So Plasma was in a bit of a weird state where people were opting not to bring it. It wasn't really fulfilling its effective stripping armor well enough to then combine with the 100mm ammunition types to then actually do the damage. So the main reason was having the C81 being sustained fire as it is facing forward, but then allowing the T81 to do burst fire. Likewise, the C60 cannon, I'll come back to Plasma in a second, has also had a change. So these frontal casemates have now gone into sustained fire as opposed from burst fire. This one here does 1 round every 18 seconds instead of 4 rounds every 72. Still maintains the same rate of fire. Sorry, just quickly jumping back to Plasma. So the C81 and the T81 also have had their accuracy increased. The Plasma now has a fall-off based damage, so damage will be 60 centimeters immediately on firing, and then it will degrade down to 30 centimeters at its maximum range. Now, the patch notes say that the Plasma shots will fade to blue as they age. You can see a little bit there, so let's actually just follow some. You can see it's quite purple, starting to get to about bluish here. There you go. So that's there to represent the fall-off damage. So as the Plasma travels, it will cool. Probably could use a little bit more of a tweak in terms of the fall-off color, because that's still looking purple to me, and it sort of gets to bluish here. By the time it gets to here, I'd probably like to see it more around like that mid to dark blue, because it's still getting to a purple about where the mouse is now, and then it's not really giving that, and then it sort of falls off very hard here. So I'm pretty sure from where it falls off, it's around halfway through you really start to get that fall off occurring, but I could be wrong. Probably the last major change is to the PD controller. So a few people were encountering issues where you would have your point defense turrets pointing at a missile. Your missiles would be coming inbound. However, your point defense options, even though they were pointing in the right direction, had ammunition or power, and they clearly had a lock and could be detected, weren't firing. And what was occurring is they were being targeted too far out. So the PD controller was basically targeting a missile that was a lot further out from that ship, basically. So if your defender has a range of, say, 1,750 meters, it was being allocated a target at, say, maybe 5,000. I'm making up these numbers, so don't hold them to me, which basically meant it was looking and tracking that threat. However, when there was something a lot closer and it should be shooting at that, that defender wasn't actually able to engage, which then resulted in ships being killed. So what has been updated is that the PD controller will prioritize a sorting based on a time to impact buckets, with threats in each bucket sorted by size. Now, what does that mean? What that means is every 5 seconds, the game is going to group all the missiles that are about to hit a ship or aim towards a ship, and it's going to then sort them. So in each 5 second increment, it's going to look for decoys first, because decoys are always the largest threat to the ship. That's how, and not in terms of damage, but the point defense controller looks for decoys above anything else. So that's how your ship will always engage decoys first. It'll then look for any size 3 missiles. So things such as size 3 hybrids, for example. Then it'll look for size 2. If there's no size 2, then it'll engage size 1. If there's no size 1, it'll go back to just doing nothing. Then in the next 5 second increment, it's also going to then check what's in that next bucket, allocate. So that means you should always be shooting down the largest missiles. So containers and size 3 hybrids and torpedoes, for example, should always be the priority that your PD controller will go for on your ship. Although that then leaves the ship open to size 2, size 1s, but they will obviously do less armor penetration and less damage compared to the larger counterpart. One thing I didn't clarify was, is it a fixed 5 second window every 5 seconds, or is it a rolling 5 seconds? Either way, it's 5 seconds. The PD controller is doing something in there. I wouldn't be surprised if it is rolling. As new threats are introduced, it's having a look, because you could have used a static 5 second updater, but I'm not necessarily sure there. There have been a few other small bug changes. I'll just quickly call out that the cold gas bottle doesn't apply its effects now for the entire duration of flight, only upon launching. So there's a bit of a change there. If you're using fixed cold gas bottles on your size 3 missiles, just check if that's what you still want, or if you were using something that wasn't intended. RPF rounds that were teleporting into asteroids when they trigger. I think that you see that in one game where Dragon had one of his missiles randomly deploy into an asteroid. The game still calculated where the damage should have gone. However, it was the visual that was going a little bit weird. That's been fixed. And impact effects are now positioned relative to the hit ship. So slight position lag on clients will no longer will no longer show impacts offset in space. Again, not a major deal, but when you're making decisions based on where damage is going, you obviously want it to be in the right place. So that's good. A range of optimizations from HUD updating with large numbers of tracks, as well as some of the common non-game object data with instance pooling. Don't understand any of it. Game's a little bit better optimized. Mesa did also a lot of work in bringing down and the load on the game for the dedicated servers, so the game is a little bit better optimized. I think this is the 4th optimization pass we're up to that I'm loosely counting. Finally, I will end this video update just by giving a shout out to Shadow Lotus. I am over on the Discord. He is the latest community hero, awarded for various efforts to the community in the Discord as a Discord role. The main reason is that they solved the reason why that you would sometimes get the big in-game yellow cylinders or red radar cylinders, and you'd be going, why is it doing that? No one's been able to figure it out for a while. He figured it out, posted it down in bug reports. Mason was able to reproduce it within seconds, and we've now got a fix. So big shout out to Shadow Lotus. You have solved a bug that no one could figure out for a long time. All right, so that ends this video. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments below. Just a little bit on a channel note, I am trying to go through and update some of the older tutorials. There has been a lot of changes within the game mechanics, particularly for things such as like electronic intelligence. The updates themselves have been obviously covered within update videos over time, but they're not centrally located, and that makes it hard for new players, which is the reason why I started this channel, was for new player content and tutorials and stuff like that. So I am trying to go back through. I'll probably at the moment aim for maybe like a video a week, so that I don't burn myself out and stop making videos for a while, like I have in the past when I get a little bit burnt out from work and from video creation. So bear with me. We'll hopefully also get some new tutorials up, and hopefully things such as power, armor, internal damage calculations, all that sort of stuff will be covered in the not too distant future. All right, thanks for watching. Take care.